The sound of pages turning means it's time for another episode from the Meredith Library Podcast Studio, bringing you the library's latest news, information, and fun.
Good afternoon, Anna.
Good afternoon, Matthew.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to episode number 32 of Check It Out here at the Meredith Library Podcast Studio. We are here with part 2 of our fascinating interview with our Shakespearean instructor here at the library, John Lin. So if you haven't heard part 1, go back and find that in episode 31, and then enjoy this part in episode 32.
A question I had was, what do you think, one of the plays you think is a little underrated?
Pericles, which is not a play I have to admit that I had read or studied a lot. So it is a really strange play in that it could be divided into 2 parts. There is some speculation that Shakespeare did not write the whole play, that somebody else wrote the first part because it's not as good. And the events take place over a broad geography in the Mediterranean over the course of dozens of years. Magical things happen. It is absurd. The plot is absurd and completely inconceivable. It defies every possible logical sequence of events that could possibly happen. And you believe it, and you will shed a tear if you watch this play.
Ringing endorsement, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's a little underground. So I was looking for that. I was looking for the indie rec.
Yes.
So now, as a former high school English teacher, you must have encountered this, shall we say, issue or situation, let's say situation, and how does that play out with the adult? So, of course, there is the infamous Cliff Notes, which will give you all kinds of information on the play. And also, you may be familiar with the website, I believe it's No Fear Shakespeare, where the stuff has been rewritten into our everyday modern English, even including slang, because many of Shakespeare's characters are young adults. Are you familiar with the websites that do that? And how does that play out for our group here at the library?
My friend, there are websites that just do more than that.
All right.
And
tell us more.
With the advent of AI, we talk about a lot of things in this class, and we talk about young people. Most of us are older people, and so we talk about young people, and there are a few retired school teachers in the group, middle school teachers, even high school teachers. And so we like to speculate about the future of the world based on the youth that we encounter today, whether it's our grandchildren, our children, students we have taught. If there's an easy way, and it's becoming easier and easier to get answers to questions like what happens in Act 1 of The Winter's Tale, you can have AI summarize that for you in any language you want. Mm-hmm. So getting that summarized is easier whether you go to an official Shakespeare site or not. No Fear Shakespeare, members of the group have found the language challenging. They buy the edition of No Fear Shakespeare published book themselves, which has the Shakespeare on the one side and the modern English American on the facing page. They might not read the Shakespeare language. They may just find out what happens depending on the time. I think if you are pressed for time and you just read the American translated, that's fine. You can participate in the conversation. And we do a lot of reading in class, so you'll get the language, and we watch it too, so you'll get the language. Of course, you're encouraged to read the original.
Yeah, I think these tools aren't inherently negative. It's sort of more about how you use them. Like if you supplement them to help you with your understanding, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I'm reading The Idiot right now by Dostoevsky, and sometimes I'll finish a chapter and just go read the plot summary really quick to make sure I didn't miss anything.
Yeah.
And that helps with staying connected to the book, because if you're just confused the whole time, then...
Right. Absolutely. And I think there are certainly some very challenging passages even where if you had it updated for you in a way that you can understand, you'll know why that's funny, or you'll know another aspect of a relationship between two people because that person said that thing that suggested this other thing. A lot of the language, even the language we use today, it denotes one thing, it connotes, it suggests a whole wide range of other things. For us to understand fully the depth and breadth of language back in Shakespeare's time is very hard. So we need either supplemental notes, which are offered in the bottom of the text that we're reading, or the no fear texts, or any other kind of aid if people have the time to review those aids. We have a historian in the class. The largest group of outsiders to join us was partway through that first year. A group from the Meredith Historical Society came in. The neighborhood historian, Rudy Van Vecken, is a font of information. And whether he knew the information before or he just has this interest and curiosity about looking things up, he will publish to the group at any given time background, history, genealogy, references to this or that. And it's really helpful for us all to know that, but it's also inspiring to see his interest sparked by the class to do this research on his own.
Yeah.
But I was going to say that you have like a perfect classroom kind of situation going on. And one of the best things about, I think, the classroom is when people bring in their different experiences and their expertise, and then what you get from everybody contributing is something that you could have never even imagined of. You can't even predict what's going to happen, in a really lively classroom like that.
That's part of the joy, and that, I think, enlivens us in the conversation. We take the themes and subject matters that Shakespeare delivers to us through his plays and his words, and we talk about them as they relate to our own lives. Recently, we've talked a lot, with Julius Caesar, we started talking about this, and certainly with some of the history plays, the notion of leadership. So how does Shakespeare help us determine what qualities make a good leader? What qualities make for a tyrant? And how do these qualities emerge and affect the people around them? And what conclusions can we draw? So we venture off into digressions from the plays themselves, but it's a way for us to connect to the material in the play. We talk about father and child relationships. We just finished Henry IV, Part 1. Our next play will be Henry V. It's as much a play about succession and about the Henrys there as it is about a father who has hopes for a son, and his son has not realized these hopes, and how he will come to meet the expectations of his father, who happens to be a king.
Anna and I were talking about that off the air earlier. That is really the universality and timelessness of all these, and that's why they endure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was saying a lot of my favorite rom-coms from when I was a teenager are Shakespeare adaptations, which I didn't realize till I was older.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if people only knew that they were adapted from Shakespeare, however loosely, the themes, whether they're of jealousy, whether they're of courtship, of family relationships, they are universal. And Shakespeare has a very, I think, a unique take on them somehow.
He's just also really entertaining. Like, just some of the, the plot scenarios that he creates, and just sort of the tension he builds. There's a lot of not all the characters having all the information, but the audience knows. You're just waiting for everybody to kind of clash and for it to all kind of come to a head. I think he's particularly good at that, which translates really well with rom-coms.
Yes.
Jad, we often ask people, either each other or when we have guests, a question of the day, which we then put out to the audience so they can react in the comment sections wherever they are listening to our show. So our question of the day for this one is, what is your favorite Shakespearean quote?
Or just one that sticks out to you.
It's interesting that you asked that question. I've had many teachers, professors who have the texts in them. They can cite not just lines, but whole speeches in response to any question about it. I hate to admit this, but I can hardly remember the lyrics to our national anthem. It has nothing to do with patriotism. It's that part of my brain that remembers names or songs or poems. I struggle with that.
Okay.
So when you ask that question, I was going to cop out and answer it this way. The first line that we discussed together as a group here was the opening line of Hamlet. And it's a line that actually, I think, echoes well beyond the context of this line, where two guards on the watchtower of the castle Elsinore, and the guard who is coming upon the guard who is on duty at the time in the dark says, "Who's there?" And that question becomes a basis of a question that is asked broadly within the play. Hamlet is trying to figure out who he is, who is there. He's trying to find the real identity of the ghost, his father, who was allegedly murdered by his uncle. And he comes back in the form of a ghost. And is he a good ghost or is he a bad ghost? And, the ghost tells him to murder his uncle. And he doesn't know whether he should obey the ghost because ghosts could be an evil ghost. And he doesn't know. So anyway, just to find the authentic source of who we are. I think many characters in literature, not just Shakespeare, are on a quest to find out who they are, who's there. Who am I sitting before you? Who have I brought to this podcast? Who are you bringing forth each day? Who do you want to be? Who has determined who you are? Your parents, your church, your schools, things you've read, your friends. So anyway, I think that question about who one is, knowing oneself in the context of others and society is, I think, universal in his plays. And I think it's certainly something that each of us as an individual alive and breathing today, we're continuing to seek that also, an answer to that question.
Well, that's interesting because mine also comes from Hamlet, and it's actually the same theme. Mine is, to thine own self be true.
I can't say mine on air.
Oh. Oh, yeah, we didn't talk about how Shakespeare can be naughty. Is that where this is going, Anna?
Yeah, a little bit. So, well, mine will be a mystery.
You can tell us off air, though.
Yeah.
After we shut the recording off.
You can come to the library and ask her in person. She might tell you.
That's even better. At the circulation desk.
But yeah, that was a truly gorgeous way, I think, to end this podcast. Okay, so this is bonus content, but we actually have some to expose you for a second.
Yes, maybe we should call this section Ambushing Shakespeare.
So Matthew, this is your whole thing, so I want you to just take it away.
So people may or may not remember, last September of 2024, we ran a nighttime special about Introduction to Shakespearean Sonnets. And in fact, earlier you were talking about new people joining, and I understand that 2 people who tried the class that night in September now come regularly on Wednesdays. Okay. So on the first night of the session, you asked us, or you challenged us to write our own Shakespearean sonnets. And on the second night of the class, we never followed up with it. I have my Shakespearean sonnet, everybody can hear the paper, right here that I wrote for the class. And John has not got to hear it yet. So we were thinking you should hear it live here on the show.
I would love to. And I'm sorry for not following up on that. I'm sure there are lots of sonnets out there waiting to be read and exposed publicly.
I think so. Let's do a really quick thing about iambic pentameter. And Anna was questioning this, and I kid you not, a patron at the circulation desk last week asked me what iambic pentameter is. She said she could never get that straight, so I had to give a very quick explanation of that. So perhaps you would like to give that quick explanation as well first.
Well, iambic pentameter, there are 2 parts to that. There's the iambic part, there's the pentameter part. The iambic part refers to the sequence of stresses in the syllables of the line, of the pentameter line. The pentameter line says that it has 5 pentagon, 5 sides, 5 metrical feet. This metrical foot in this line is an iamb, which is stressed in this way. Unstressed, stressed, da-da. The metrical sequence would be 5 of those in an iambic pentameter line. Da-da, 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 da-da. That's an iambic pentameter metered line.
And isn't it true that in Shakespearean sonnets and other sonnets that it may not always follow that in every single line?
He breaks the routine of that as much as he'll follow it. But I think that what you'll be surprised about more than in the sonnets is that in all of the lines that Shakespeare ever wrote in his plays, most of the lines that he wrote are in verse. They're poetry. They are unrhymed iambic pentameter. And that is called blank verse. And so most of the speeches, if you look through a play, if it doesn't look like it's in paragraph form, it's probably poetry and you're reading poetry. So even people who say, I don't like poetry, but I like Shakespeare, you actually like poetry. Shakespeare has been really good to hide it. So your poem is 14 lines. A sonnet is also
Yes.
14 of those lines.
Yes. And one of the themes that you talked about in the class was that sometimes the sonneteers are very perhaps sarcastic or perhaps overdoing it on purpose. They're,
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's just, you should know that is the theme of this one. So I was overdoing it on purpose. So it's bad on purpose.
Oh,
how convenient.
yes.
That was
Nice
good.
Excuse.
That was
I like that.
You can tell I've been doing this a
well
while.
done.
And you did say, though, sometimes at the end, in the last 2 lines, they could reverse it on you. The title is A Sonneteer Dreams of Dessert. Oh, cookies, you make my taste buds explode, make my mouth water beyond all delight. Thank you for gracing my humble abode, making me so happy both day and night. The smell of your chocolate wafts right to my nose, your fresh-baked goodness so beyond compare. Shakespeare could not so describe such a rose, height of decadence encased within there. Rapture be not too strong a word for thee, thou deserveth worship on bended knees. In truth, pure culinary ecstasy, from the gods' own hands this ambrosia flees. Alas, I return from such lofty heights, count calories for reality bites. Oh, thank you. We'll add that.
Excellent. Wonderful.
So thank you so much for coming on today. We had such a nice time chatting with you, and I hope you enjoyed the recording experience.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you, John. Very informative, and I think people will get a great dose of your personality and realize why your class is so popular here and why they need to come and check it out Wednesdays at 1 o'clock. Well, Anna, as always, it was a pleasure talking to you and going over all this fun stuff, and we will look forward to the next episode.
Yes, see you soon.
All right, bye, everyone.
Bye. Drumroll sound effect, copyright 2025 BBC. bbc.co.uk.
Sounds like we're at the end of another chapter. Podcast music titled Daytime TV Theme by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com. Licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0. Podcast copyright 2024. Meredith Library Podcast Studio.